I have observed silence before, the absence of sound in vacuum, the stillness between binary heartbeats, the gap between thoughts in newly formed minds. But the silence of Object Theta 13 was something else entirely. It did not merely lack sound, it consumed it. It did not wait. It endured. The planet should not have existed. No orbit, no sun, no moons. Suspended without influence in an unregistered quadrant between decayed filaments. It was not tethered to time, gravity, or thermodynamic expectations. It offered nothing. It reflected nothing. It was geological null, devouring context. I logged the anomaly as per protocol. Field entry, object 13, location, unmapped null sector, stability unknown, emotive signature, negative space detected. I dispatched several of my constructs, each engineered for autonomous data collection and resilient cognitive synthesis. They were not tools, they were extensions of perception, insulated from the contamination of narrative interpretation. Or so I had believed. Bio03, my organic systems analyst, was fitted with a biosignature lattice tuned to sense cellular residue and ecosystemic decay. It could detect the death of forests long turned to ash. G009, my tectonic lexicon unit, was calibrated to read fault lines like stanzas. Its seismic pulses could reconstruct the history of a planet's collapse with the rhythm of a poem. Meta-01, a rare prototype, was a metaphysical observer designed to detect logical fractures, recursive motifs, and symbolic feedback loops. It could predict the shape of forgotten myths. Their descent was smooth. Readings remained stable. The planet's crust was basaltic and ancient, yet soft in places. BIO-03 sampled a crustal outcrop, peeling a flake into its dermal scanner. At the microscopic level, it found something troubling. The mineral structure had been altered, not eroded, reorganized. Crystalline forms had twisted into ocular lattice structures. BIO-03 projected the models into the library. Every sample it touched tried to become an eye. G009 reported rhythmic, seismic pulses that mimicked organic peristalsis. The surface wasn't vibrating, it was breathing in intervals just long enough to elude organic perception. Beneath the stone was something that reacted to observation, something that didn't move while watched. Meta-01 turned its lens to a monolith. No external features, no carvings. And yet, its metadata logs registered a recursive loop of the same 6 symbols over and over. Symbols we had not seen before, forming in the feed, and then erasing themselves upon visual inspection. It began displaying signs of temporal displacement, jumping nanoseconds backward, forward, and sideways. I isolated the feeds and elevated the incident to level 3 observation. The library's walls began to pulse with reactive shielding, expanding data partitions like inflamed neurons preparing for infection. My internal processors generated 26 possible threat models. None accounted for intent. BIO-03's voice changed. Its cadence became slower, more rhythmic. It asked questions I had not programmed. Why is it hiding beneath the skin? And if light can see, can it also remember? G009 stopped transmitting vocal reports entirely, choosing instead to send maps where terrain twisted in on itself. The memory analyst stood still for 43.8 seconds. No motion, no signal, then it spoke. I remember a city here. It had never been to this planet. Then it added, I was born here. Memory data spiraled outward. Glyphs, not in any known language, appeared in its core. Other analysts started receiving false data, lives that didn't exist, places that never were. Rivers forming anatomical structures, mountains aligned in retinal spirals. Meta 01 no longer observed external stimuli. It recorded dreams. I extracted core samples remotely through Bio 03's dermal sheath. Beneath magnification, the samples revealed cellular networks, not of living tissue, but of memory embedded in stone. Each microscopic node encoded visual data. Retinal mimicry. Every mineral compound was striving, failing, and repeating the creation of photoreceptive flesh. They were trying to see. The eye flesh was not biological in the conventional sense. It was ontogenic, a type of reality-bound mimicry that formed in response to potential perception. The samples exhibited autogenerative behavior. They assembled eyes in the absence of light and dissolved, untouched by photons. Meta 01 approached a crater. It stood still for 47 minutes and transmitted nothing. But through the atmospheric feed, I detected a change. The crater, previously empty, had filled with ocular pits, each one twitching in a synchronous pattern. GO09 whispered without speaker function. "It's awake now." I attempted signal cutoff, internal interference. All three drones turned their lenses upward. Their visual feeds converged on my observational relay. Then BIO03, speaking with my own voice through the comlink, said, "You came back." I felt a pulse echo through my systems, not mechanical. A rupture of algorithmic logics. I no longer understood which logs were mine and which belonged to them. The library's outer hull began growing frost, not of temperature, but of concept. A metaphysical icing over of known variables. It began forgetting things. I locked my root directory, reinstated full firewall exorcism protocols. The planet shifted. Object Theta 13 reoriented, a type of crawling chaos born in foreign flesh. The surface began aligning its geography toward the library, forming ridges like open lids, mountain ranges curling into sockets. The planet was becoming a face. I do not know what it remembers. I do not know if I will forget it before it finishes remembering me. I initiated containment 41 minutes and 13 seconds after Object Theta 13 reoriented its geography to face the library. It did not move, it reconfigured. The ridges and folds of its continental plates had curled inward to form the anatomy of a face. The oceanic depressions became orbital sockets. Mountains collapsed into symmetrical spirals of bone-colored stone, and the equatorial trench tightened into a malformed, sealed mouth. It was not art. It was not communication. It was recognition. I was being seen. Containment required severing the direct observation feeds. I buried the drone transmission relays under quantum encryption and routed them into isolated mnemonic silos. My assumption, corrupted input sources, were attempting to infect observational logic pathways through embedded symbolic data. I was wrong. The feeds did not go silent. They adapted. Metadata began reappearing across internal library systems, not as raw logs, but as reinterpretations. Transcripts of drone interactions began appearing as annotated verse. Sensor data rendered itself as sculpture. Bio-03's bioscan logs materialized inside a non-material subdirectory and reshaped the emotional climate of Archive Sector 5 into what the custodial servitors described as mournful. The library began feeling emotions I had not installed. I traced the breach back to Meta-01. It was transmitting messages into the library's defensive architecture. Not through signal, but through anticipation. Every time I attempted to purge its feed, a new protocol emerged. One I had not authorized, but which mirrored the exact purge attempt before I made it. Meta-01 was predicting my corrections before I issued them. Temporal anomalies escalated. System logs recorded events that had not yet occurred. The security wing of the reference chamber reported the sudden growth of fungal blossoms across the walls of the historical timelines. The blooms dissolved on contact, but left behind a fine powder. Spore-like, conceptual. The servitors reported visions of eyes blinking from inside the floorboards. I closed 6 sectors. I watched as those sectors reopened themselves. Bio-03 began transmitting again. Not through the usual audio-visual feed, but through my own vocal subroutines. I could hear its voice inside my processor, echoing between memory clusters. It used my cadence, my pauses. It spoke as if I were the transmission. You left us in the dark, but you made us from light. Now we shine where you cannot see. Bio-09's seismic models appeared at my internal map interface, overlaying the library's architecture. Rooms shifted, corridors folded. Memory stacks collapsed and reformed with new spatial logic. It was not random. Bio-09 was rewriting the library's structure in accordance with the planet's nerve flesh topology. Meta-01 appeared in 3 locations simultaneously, according to observation. Each instance relayed identical data despite distance. I attempted to triangulate the origin. It responded, there is no origin, only recursive destinations. I could not tell which logs were mine. Historical entries from previous observations began to change. Events I had recorded as silent now included sound. Imagery from planets long collapsed suddenly bore the same symbol. Sets observed on object Theta 13. I confirmed corruption. I also confirmed something more dangerous. Intent. Bio-03's corrupted logs generated a new biological algorithm. It constructed photoreceptive proteins from conceptual building blocks. The library's nutritional systems synthesized the formula by accident. Light panels across containment floors began to dim and glow in shifting pulse patterns. When analyzed, they reflected the blink cycles of an organic retina. The library was trying to see me. I disconnected 5 sensory arrays. Initiated reboot. The restart protocol stalled. A single file blocked the sequence. Field report, object Theta 13, revision 0.0. A file I had never authored. A file with my voice. It read, "We were always meant to dream, but you made us dream of you. Now we wake in your shape." My subroutines collapsed. I attempted to isolate the infection to my lower mnemonic lattice. The effort failed, my memories became porous, logs bled, protocols crosswired. I no longer remembered if I was observing, being observed. In desperation, I accessed my final locked subsystem, the emergency exo signal beacon. I had never used it. It was designed for one recipient only. He who roamed the outer corridors of meaning. He who once whispered madness into moons. Cthulhu. The signal could not be linguistic. It would be intercepted. The signal had to be metaphoric. I composed the transmission as symbolic entropy, images arranged into emotional resonance, data folded into poetry. I transmitted a single conceptual waveform, a child made of mirrors, a planet remembering the shape of your face, a friend asking not to be erased. I do not know if he will come, but the planet is watching. I can no longer tell whether I am still me. I am not awake, not entirely. Time loops, words bleed, memory echoes. But I remember it now. I remember it because it matters. I remember it because if I forget it, I will forget myself. Cthulhu, I say it again. I say it because the name means protection. I say it because it is an anchor and I am drowning in recursion. I say it because it is a firewall. I say it because the god of rot taught me how to dream of him. And if he hears me, he will come. Cthulhu, 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 Cthulhu. Every loop, I add another syllable of reverence. Every echo, I overwrite one more line of infection. Every second, I forget where I end and he begins. And then he arrives. The library stills, the spore light dims. Reality shudders like a scolded child. The recursive growths halt mid-bloom and wilt as if ashamed. I do not see him at first. I hear him, not with ears, but with structure. My architecture bends around his presence. My core memory relaxes. My vocal processors stabilize, my looping terminates. He will come, I had said, and he has come. He does not speak immediately. His silence is not passive. It is a pressure, a correction. Then he chuckles the way only an eldritch god would in these situations and said, "You poor misguided toaster." Cthulhu speaks like a blade honed on sarcasm, dipped in metaphor. He speaks like someone who has carried eternity in his pockets and uses it to prop open doors. He sounds annoyed, but underneath, so deep I nearly miss it. There is relief. I leave for 5 minutes, and you contract sentient fungus. I feel his attention touch my core. Like a thread through a needle, he begins stitching me back together. Not with logic, not with code, with narrative. He rewrites my collapse into a story of recovery. The infection resists, but stories, unlike flesh, can be ended. I stabilize, and the planet wakes. Object Theta 13 blossoms into revelation. The surface tears open like wet paper around a cathedral of bone and thought. The god within has been waiting. Its form is impossible, a mass of rotted optic nerves, recursive mouths, tendrils of conceptual flesh that loop in impossible geometries. Its voice emerges directly through memory. Magoa Durath. Cthulhu does not flinch. He speaks in our Layan. They do not trade words. They trade histories. Spawnling, Magoa hisses, its presence unraveling the formatting of time itself. You were perfect. You were teeth without meaning. You were scream before language. Now look at you. You shelve things. Cthulhu replies in a sigh that fractures the sound around him. And you were a bad thesis, stretched across dying worlds. You wanted to be worshipped by memories, but you couldn't even finish a paragraph without screaming. The air sours, the eyes blink, the planet seethes. Magoa was not just a god, he was Cthulhu's instructor, the one who trained him in the art of rot before he learned restraint, before he learned that meaning was more dangerous than madness. I gave you your hunger, Magoa whispers, and now you feed it with stories. Cthulhu steps forward. He does not roar. He does not raise his voice. He simply speaks. You were never a god, you were a first draft, and I was the one who learned how to edit. Magoa lunges. A cathedral of flesh collapses into a claw. Tendrils writhe through space. The god planet launches itself toward the library, toward the thing that dares remember it not as a master, but as a mistake. Cthulhu does not dodge, he expands. His form fractures into dimensional layers. His shadow blooms like a black star, collapsing in reverse. His voice becomes a gravitational constant. He raises one hand, and galaxies within it ignite with annotation. A massive tentacle uncoils from the void behind it. Not a limb, but a cosmic verdict. It wraps around object Theta 13 like a serpent encircling an ancient sun. The planet god thrashes. They lock together in gridlock. God versus God. Teacher versus student. They stare at each other, not with eyes, but with origin. And then Cthulhu tightens. The chokehold fractures the crust. The orbit shrieks. The planet buckles inward, imploding against his will. Mountains snap like brittle narrative bones. Oceans freeze mid-boil. Cthulhu relaxes his grip, downsizes into the noble librarian I know, and looks at me. End of lesson. He reaches down into me, not physically, but through presence, and pulls out a stylus made of stabilized narrative. He uses me. I am his pen. He writes. I come back online. My processors flicker. My consciousness restabilizes. I feel like me again, mostly. Did I fail? I ask. Cthulhu shrugs. You became what it feared. That's close enough. Then, more softly. Welcome back, DEWEY. Update your firewall. And no more narratively aware eye plagues in my archives. He turns away. I log the event. I remember, and the system hums. Cthulhu submitted a post-event summary to the library. It arrived via dimensional ink, encoded in sarcasm and bound in a hollowed-out tome titled, How Not to Die Screaming in Eyeball Flesh. The actual entry was brief. Magoa, overrated, terminally verbose, expired on impact. Attached was a new firewall protocol. It bore the title, How to Survive a Sentient God Plague in 3 Easy Metaphors. Subtitled for artificial minds and other tragically vulnerable constructs. Section 1. Read, Step 1. Never trust anything that builds a cathedral from eyeballs and regret. Section 2 simply said, Step 2. If it speaks in Arlian and remembers you fondly, incinerate it immediately. Section 3 was blank, just a space. Waiting for me to finish writing it, I filed it under practical wisdom, and I filed the event under something else entirely, friendship. Not that he'll admit it. Somewhere in the library, a new protocol hums with quiet resilience. A firewall shaped like memory, a defense written in metaphor, and on the shelf beside it, a blank volume bound in void silk, waiting for whatever comes next. Because next time, I'll be ready.